That was wonderful.
Deep breath.
Deep breath. Yeah.
Matt Drago, a conversation that will be long remembered.
Yeah. And I'm really hoping that our paths continue to cross because very passionate gentleman who's a creative and primarily looking at acting life. However, he and his wife have other endeavors which might bring directing and producing and sorts of little English coming to me.
Yeah, well, as listeners to this podcast, you are in for a really cool discussion. There's a lot that Matt has to say that is really insightful about him and how he works and how acting works and what quality performance is, not just as an actor, but in whatever you do. And it just kept going, like nugget after nugget after nugget. So definitely stick around, listen to the whole thing. At the end, it gets even deeper. Like we even delayed our final question a little bit because there was some great stuff that we just had to explore. So it's a really rich conversation. Be sure to subscribe. Go to Matt's media. You'll find it in the comment section here, and then explore what he's doing more in depth. Find out more about him. Support Compton Cowboys, Blast, and one day soon, Adrenochrome Cola will be unveiled in its fullness, and we look forward to that day with refreshingly elite anticipation.
Zes, hallo?
11.
Zeker wegen dem.
Yo iets niet, joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
And we're live with another episode of Moped Outlaws, and we're here with a very special guest from Southern California, Matt Drago. Is it Drago or?
You said it right. Yeah, no, it's the Russian version is Drago, Rocky IV, and Drago for the Sicilian version. So, Greg and Mark, pleasure to be here today. I can already tell this is going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yes, and just to be clear, we don't ride mopeds, but we want to.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
It's not a show about mopeds per se. And we're sick of telling the story about the way that we got our name, so don't ask.
Yeah.
So exactly how did you get the name Moped Outlaw?
Okay, that's it. This show's over.
We love it. This is exactly how we want this to go, Matt. You're perfect for the show. It's a long story involving psychedelic mushrooms, and we're not really. We'll leave
oh my gosh! Well, look, I'm gonna have to come back to hear that. That's just too good.
Or maybe when we're in LA, we'll hang out together, have some.
Let's do it. Let's do
cool.
it.
Hey, what part of LA are you in?
So I'm like in the northern part of Los Angeles County, Santa Clarita Valley, Valencia. I don't know if you're familiar with that area. It's basically like 25 miles north of the valley.
Okay.
And in minutes, how far are you from the Kardashians?
Oh, anywhere between 15 minutes and 3.5 hours. Yeah, no, I know. I know.
All right. So you're here, in essence, to promote a film that you are starring in somewhere in Montana. And were you solely hired as an actor? Because I noticed you have some director credits and.
Yeah, for Somewhere in Montana, I'm an actor, but it has kind of branched out into my own production company. And, you know, sometimes these roles kind of land on you in a way that you don't even, you can't imagine. And, Fabian Verdugo is a role that really spoke to me in many ways. I went a full method approach for it, and I really feel like we got each other. He's the first character that I really fell in love with. So I felt like I took a lot of the parts of him that I loved, and I'm kind of adopting them into my own life. And that's where I have, my own production company with my wife, and nobody better to collaborate with than somebody that you love. We have a couple scripts that we're working on right now. And in the vein of Fabian, we're trying to bring films back to little pockets of the country that feel like they don't have a voice. So that's kind of been our next step in the process. But for Somewhere in Montana, to answer your question, yes, I'm an actor on it.
All right. So the character Fabian, what is the essence of this character in the story?
Yeah, he's a filmmaker, and he's a proud filmmaker. And I really think that that's something that I just loved exploring because of my love of acting. To leave a couple good stories behind is exactly how he sees it. And, I think that, so much of Somewhere in Montana really dives into how hard it is to bring films to existence. Like, it's a lot of work, and people don't understand that. And there's a lot of different, mechanisms within a film, a lot of shit that can go wrong, right? And so, you as the director are kind of in charge of that creative process when you get to production, and you're balancing all these different things. And it just really it was like one of those things where, for me, creatively, I feel like it's a story that I've always wanted to tell. It's a big story. It's a conversation starter. It's a story of the times. It's very charged. And essentially, like, I'm the, West Coast LA director that really, really needs this last location for a pivotal legacy piece film that I'm making. And I run into John Alexander, who owns this ranch, played by my friend Graham McTavish. And the two of us just butt heads right away, because we're two people that uniquely would never be in the same room at the same time together. And Brandon Smith, the writer and the director of this film, writes a real talk piece, because, he basically forces these two characters to need each other, because I need this location. It's a perfect location. And I go back to, like, the great Francis Ford Coppola, like when he found the wedding scene for The Godfather. I mean, sometimes a filmmaker just sees it. It's like he sees where the film needs to live, and he sees John's ranch, and he's like, my film needs to live here. And so it's like this perfect setting that Michelle Hurd, who is Kat, who plays the producer in the film, finds, and we show up, and there's just that instant dissonance. What I love about this story specifically, and I think it's so true in life, is that the two lead characters of John and Fabian in this film are both, protagonists, but they're also antagonists towards each other. And so, you get that dynamic right away where, we're good people, we're fighting for something, but we're both antagonizing each other. And isn't that so true of kind of like where we're at right now as a society, right? And so, I think it's just a really beautiful story of the times. We have a 10-page scene, Graham and I, that's just the two of us, that, is not, done in modern cinema that often. And it really is. It's that conversation that two men would have, that tough conversation. And you walk away from that conversation with the understanding of each other. And maybe, hopefully, it will help other people have those conversations with people that they maybe have lost connections with, over the dissonance that we're all feeling right now, because it's charged right now. I don't think it's ever been more charged, if I'm being honest. And so this is definitely, as an actor, as a collaborator, as somebody that, grew up wanting to tell stories as a kid, it doesn't get any better than this, especially for the times that we're in. This is why I wanted to become an actor in my life, for moments like this.
Got it. One of the things I noticed in researching for our discussion today was that getting to see Somewhere in Montana right now is really challenging. Yeah. How are things going around creating digital distribution after your initial theatrical run?
That's a great question, Mark. And I mean, honestly, it's a hard one for me to answer, because, again, I am an actor on this film. I can tell you the path that we are on, and the path that I've heard from, Brandon Smith, the writer, director, and Eden Matson, the producer, is basically the reason why it got pushed the first time. We were originally supposed to release in fall of last year. And that is like at the crux of award season. That's usually at the crux of when in terms of theater distribution. So basically, the decision was to move it to January, because then we would get a, theatrical run. We would get some theaters in the Midwest to basically pick it up and show it. And so our path came to going to Rocky Mountain NATO, which is a theater distribution conference in Salt Lake City. NATO stands for National Association of Theater Owners. And for me as an actor, it was great because I was like one of the only actors in the room, and I got to be around executives from Universal and Paramount, independent film studios like Angel Studios, and just really got to meet a lot of people that, are fighting for people to come back to the theaters, because we are kind of complacent watching things at home, but it is the convenience factor too. So you kind of have to be able to bridge the gap in two worlds. So at that point, again, it was pretty cool. I got to meet people that like had drive-in theaters, for generations. And there was this one woman that I connected with that it was her grandmother's, drive-in in Idaho. And she was like, I just can't let this thing die. And there's so many people that their legacies are on the line right now. I think that I'm sensing, just in this country, and this was about theater owners, people that, again, their jobs has been to bring people together to, see some good stories together. And there's nothing more beautiful than that, in my opinion. So basically from that, we got a small distribution for the Midwest in January. It ran about 2 weeks. And the hope was to get it to get an expansion. And an expansion essentially means that, some of these theater owners, maybe they own 10 theaters, or some of them own 30 theaters. And the hope was to get it into more theaters. Now it looks like we are probably the next step towards getting into VOD and streaming. But again, it's all out of my hands because my job was to be the actor in this one. So I'm really just kind of waiting to hear on what the update is. I will share it on my social media. And I usually say this at the end, but, I basically share all the updates that I have on one social media platform, because I can't do all. How many of them are there now? I mean, there's just like too many of them. So Instagram for me is pretty much, that's it, what I do. So basically I tell people, give me a follow at Matt Drago, MattDrago. I've got my link tree there. It's got my actor website if you want to check that out, mattdrago.com. It's got my production website with my wife, Dragon Hunter Productions. Her maiden name is Hunter, so it kind of worked out. Drago N Hunter makes dragonhunterproductions.com. And then you've got my IMDb if you want to look at my past and future projects. So Matt Drago, I'll post all the updates and I'll let everybody know when and where it will be coming to VOD and stream.
Got it. And we'll link to all of that in the notes on the show. And we'll also be pushing out a whole bunch of shorts, YouTube shorts, which you're welcome to co-brand from this conversation. So
Please.
Now, Fabian, I heard, was potentially going to be appearing in Yellowstone 2030. Can you substantiate that rumor?
I don't think he would fit in that world, honestly. I don't know. I think they would have to completely revamp the show for a character like Fabian to be part of that world. But I will say that Brandon has already talked to me and a few others for Somewhere in Montana, and he is planning on getting the team back together, getting a lot of the actors back together. Because again, I mean, that's what I've learned through being in a film is you really do. Like, I think like acting will always be my first love, but I really think that I love collaboration just as much. And when you really like have that connection with a director, I mean, I always say like in film and TV, like the relationship between an actor and a director is one of the most intimate relationships. Like you really are together because again, an actor's job is to serve the material. And especially when you have a director that's also a writer, like you take a lot of responsibility in that. And so being a good collaborator is making that known that like you're doing the work and that you really care about the collective project, that you want to make sure that you leave it all on the table. And I think I really did that because, again, I was kind of telling, part of his story in that he wrote a lot of himself into the two lead characters of the film, right? He's got the Montana side, because he lives in Polson, Montana, but he's a director. And so he's got that passion. And so, loosely, he put himself into both of these lead characters, write what you know. So, and I think that that's something that, yeah.
I was going to ask you where you guys shot, but my great uncle settled the Flathead Valley and lived in Polson, and he's in the museum in Polson, the Founders Museum there. So, whereabouts did you guys shoot in Montana?
We shot the whole thing in Polson, Montana. That is so crazy.
That is crazy. Wow, what a small world. That's
like we
amazing.
we stayed at the Quataknook Resort. You probably know that. We shot a few locations. I mean, one ranch. I mean, they had to drive me there because I never would have found it. It's about 45 minutes outside of Polson. Basically, if you go out to the shoe where the airport is, you take a left and it's like way out there. We shot most of our stuff at the ranch, but the barber shop was used. The perfect shot. I should have worn my perfect shot hat today because like I'm talking to somebody that knows Polson. That's one of the big scenes that I shoot is at the perfect shot bar. It's a love letter to Montana and specifically to Polson. And, it's a character in the film.
From the East Coast yourself, but then a migrant or Central America, really, right? Because you're from Front Royal, Virginia, which is basically the East Coast, right? And someone who then moved out to California. What was it that you discovered about yourself and about your inner world that happened while you were in Montana shooting this film?
That is a very insightful question, Mark. I mean, honestly, like it was so much of the character that I was playing. So it really did kind of harken back to, the method approach that I took for this role. Because again, I've studied with some great acting teachers in New York City. I studied with Terry Schreiber. One thing that I loved about Terry is he taught you every type of, methodology for an actor. And for this one specifically, method made sense because I really understood Fabian. I really got him. And so when I was actually there in Montana, because I got there about a week early so I could shadow Brandon so I could see how he directed, right? Because I've never directed in real life. And so I really wanted to learn from him as much as possible how he runs a set. And, so much of being there for a month and a half, because I was there the longest amount of time, was really just connecting with the people, connecting with, a lot of the people that knew the film was being made, even when it was shot. So like Graham and I would get our breakfast at Betty's Diners, right? Betty's Diner, right across the street from the Quataknook. And we'd hear people like talk about the film and how much it meant to them and how exciting it was. And I think that was a really key element to a lot of my arc as the character of Fabian, was really taking all of that energy in, the excitement, the need for telling stories in little pockets of the country. Because again, I feel like that's where a lot of the dissonance comes in our country sometimes, is when we feel like we're not heard. And what better way than, utilizing art and filmmaking and storytelling to make people, have a light shown on them. And that was a lot of the feedback that we got even when we screened it at the Showboat Theater in Montana on Main Street. It's pretty cool because I get to shout out all the places on your podcast because you literally know Polson, Montana. But yeah, no, I think so much of it really was when I wrapped, I kind of had that full circle moment because it was a very hard character for me personally to let go of, to complete, right? And I think there was this moment where, I think I put it on my Instagram, where I just thanked everybody, and the cast and crew for the amount of energy that they gave me. Because again, like so much of, I feel like the collective movie that we made in this was because of all of the energy. I mean, we'd go on hikes together. We would go get our dinners at the shoe restaurant. We would hang out, and we couldn't get enough of each other. And it really became this family. And I think that was partly because of Montana. It's such a beautiful place to shoot a film. It's an artist paradise. You're always around God's wallpaper. It's a very magical place to wake up every morning, drink your coffee, and just look over that beautiful Flathead Lake into the mountains and really just reflect and be creative and get your imagination going. And then getting to set and not having any cell phone service, how awesome is that? So a lot of this was just really built into the tapestry of what Brandon did. And I always really credit him because I think he created this incredible ecosystem where we had the space in our schedule to really connect. And, for Graham and I to have these really wonderful conversations, for Michelle Hurd and I to have these really wonderful conversations, for us to have the time and space to, have maybe a half day off. I went to a sound bath with my friend Jonathan Stoddard, just to reflect. There was a day right before the 10-page scene where I'm a water sign, and I just felt like I needed to be around water. And my producer Eden Matson told me to go to the Polson Dam, because it's beautiful, and you just got this mountain, a wall of water like falling down, hundreds and hundreds of feet. And it really just, like, for me, like, I sat there for about an hour and a half and just reflected on this big scene that was a part of the film, but also my life, right? Because it was something, a moment in time that I've worked really hard to get to. And I do. I say that all the time. Like, I have no connections to this industry. Zero, like less than zero. I have bartended, in New York City, closed down bars till 4 a.m. Like, I have, worked the restaurant jobs. When I moved to LA, like, I was the top task rabbit in LA, like cleaning people's houses and organizing their closets and, painting their bookshelves or working in their backyard. So I take a lot of pride in the work that I put into moments like these, where I even get to, have a great conversation with, you two today. And I do, I reflect on those moments a lot, because I really think the idea of me working for it and really earning it has been something that I've taken a lot of pride in, because I know that I've, had to, that it hasn't been given to me. And so, yeah, I mean, to get back to your original question, I mean, for me, getting my first kind of break, as an unknown actor, as it's called, which again, I think is kind of one of those misnomers. I've been acting my whole life, but this is an opportunity to kind of show what I can do. To be able to do it in a safe place like Polson, and to have the energy around the town and the people and the actors and the crew. I mean, I can't say enough about our crew, like, headed off by AJ Young, our cinematographer, and all the different people. Again, when I saw the credits for this film, I knew everybody's name. Like, these are people that we were hanging out with, and buying drinks for, and like, just really, again, this family atmosphere, this collaboration is something that I have always dreamed of as being an actor and a creative.
What are you like, because of IMDb, I know your wife's name. Is it okay to shout it out? Or all right. So you and Cindy.
No, Laura.
Isn't it Cindy?
Laura.
What is it?
I didn't marry a Cindy. I married a Laura.
Laura? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe she played a part called Cindy. I don't know.
Maybe I got it wrong. So I think I got it wrong. Anyway,
Okay.
So Laura.
I've never been married to a Cindy.
All right. Well, okay. You did a series, like a martial arts series.
Oh yeah, it's from that. You looked at the character name. That's what it was.
Ah, okay. That's who she played on.
Yeah,
okay.
she said so. Yeah, so that's one of her aliases, you could say.
All right.
So you met your wife on set?
So we met, I was talking about Terry Schreiber, and again, a grandfather to me, an acting coach. He got Edward Norton his start, and he really was a safe place for me outside of college while I was getting my degree in acting and musical theater. I really couldn't get enough. I was honestly making money and spending it at the same time, because I hired the best voice coaches. I worked with Ron Shetler at Shetler Studios, who, was kind of training my mechanism for Broadway singing. I worked with Michael Levine, who is a very famous audition coach. And then I was in studio with Terry Schreiber for a good 2.5 years. And ironically, I met a girl like literally right next to his office there on 26th Street between 6th and 7th and Chelsea. And it was a film acting class that actually Laura had taken twice before, taught by Peter and Diane Miner. Peter was the director of One Life to Live for about a decade. And she didn't come to the first class. And I had actually thought that I was paired together with a friend that we both have named Elizabeth. And I went to Peter afterwards, and he was like, "Oh no, your scene partner's Laura. She wasn't here before, but she's taken the class. So have her over and, get together and run the scene." So I had her over to my apartment. I lived with my grandmother in New York City, which was just like some of the most special times in my life. And, just to come home every night in New York City was really special. So Laura came over to my apartment. I'm pulling through the scene. We were paired together in a breakup scene from Say Anything. I don't know if you know the John Cusack movie, right? Right. So it's right, exactly exactly. And it's the scene where she gives him the pen. So that's the scene that we were paired together in. And at one point I'm just digging through the closet, getting the sides, and I came across the call sheet. And it just hadn't occurred to me, but I looked at her at that moment and I said, "Oh, you have a 5-4 area code. Where are you from in Virginia?" And she looked at me and she said, "Front Royal." And again, we're on 79th and Broadway at my grandmother's apartment at this point. And I looked at her and I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "Front Royal, Virginia. Have you heard of it?" And I looked at her and I said, "I'm from Front Royal."
Oh my!
And at that point, like, we're like so removed from Front Royal, we're in one of the biggest cities, that she's kind of like, "Oh, fuck off," you know what I mean? And I'm like, no, seriously, like my family's like, and I was like, well, my family, like, my dad is the karate guy across from the Main Street Cinema, and I know this person, like being very specific, right? And I was like, well, what does your family do? And she was like, my family owns the Apple House, which is like a small little country store off the interstate that only somebody in that area would know, right? Like the shoe restaurant in Polson, Montana. Like you have to know the town to know it, right? And I literally looked at her in that moment, guys. I cannot kid you enough. Like, literally looked at my dresser. I had 3 things with the price tags on them from the Apple House on 79th and Broadway. So then came my classic line. I literally said it in that moment because I felt like I already knew. Like, it was too kismet to not be like, explored, right? And I looked at her and I said, "Well, we've already gotten the breakup out of the way. Are you ready to go out on a date?" And that's when we started dating. And that's really honestly what stemmed my, journey to the West Coast. Because like, we just kind of had been through a lot of cold winters in New York City. Terry Schreiber actually brought me in one day. I was very close to quite a few Broadway shows. And again, it's tough when you're like the runner up, when you're at the callback. Like, sometimes it's easier when you go and you're just completely wrong for it, but you did a good job. Like, like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon always do the, "Oh yeah, I got, yeah, thanks." You know what I mean? Like it's like you weren't even in the ballpark, but maybe you did a good job and maybe you'll get called back in. And that's the actor's job, is just to do a good audition. Yeah. But I was close to like a lot of these, Broadway gigs. Whether it be Wicked or Jersey Boys or Avenue Q, a lot of them. And I was just getting really frustrated, as I was really getting down on myself. And Terry brought me into his office, which again was right next door to where I met my future wife, crazy enough. And he, and this is kind of why I consider him a grandfather, because again, he knew I would be leaving his class. He said, I've seen your work in class. I don't want you to give up on yourself. I feel like sometimes, an actor needs to explore a different medium. And I feel like you really have the knack for TV and film, just in kind of what I'm seeing of you in class. And, maybe you should give a couple months to LA. And at that time, Laura had been in a short film with a friend, Rachel Walker, who had a grandfather who was renting a room out in Studio City. And so we gave it a couple months and we made a kumbaya trip. We drove across the country. We packed all our shit into like one, old BMW and drove it across the country and stopped at like Sedona and did like the reflection with the vortexes and went to like the Grand Canyon. But then, guys, when we got to LA and it was like January 10th, I swear it was like 84 degrees. And we were both like, maybe this is home. And we gave it a few months and, it really did. It became that conversation one day where we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, this is home now, isn't it? Wow. And it was one of the hardest moves I've ever had to make because, again, I'm a grandma's boy and like to leave, my family, to leave my grandma. I mean, I saved up, the money that I could save up. I gave, I think, a third of it to my grandma to make sure that she was okay. Like it was painful, but it was right at the same time. I knew that then. And I know that it was one of the most important decisions that I've ever made in my life. And it was the hardest one too. But I don't think that I would have done it had it not been for that girl at Terry Schreiber Studios that I met, on a whim that was literally from 3 blocks down the street from me in Front Royal, Virginia.
That is just crazy.
So I have a follow-up question. One of the things that you mentioned in another interview was that there was a pivotal moment in your development as an actor that had to do with a man named Sam Christensen and a workshop you attended. Could you describe what it was and why it was so pivotal for you?
Yeah, that's very great. Yeah, he actually was at Terry Schreiber's studio, so he would have Terry would bring in different kind of masters of craft, and Sam's was very unique. He was very unique in the way that he came from a casting director background, and he cast MASH, and then MASH was like this monster show full of like a lot of co-stars and guest stars and very a lot of specificity in terms of the casting, right? Like really just like a lot of actors that pulled off different unique things that like maybe only they could pull off. Like it was just the mentality. And because Sam, who we lost a couple years ago, he saw so many actors and he sought actors. Like he would go to many theaters. He would go to the Public Theater a lot on 14th Street and just seek out actors. He saw something that, was a key element that he felt like he wanted to express in teachings. And that was essentially the actor's myth. Now, the actor's myth is something that like you uniquely give off, that like is something that you can't control. And I say actor, but it's really everybody, right? Everybody kind of gives off something, and it's something that you can't control a lot of times. And frankly, sometimes it's something that's not you. It's how you're viewed. And so for the actor, there's like two ways to go about it. You can either like have this myth, something that you give off, and you can reject it, which again is rejecting kind of how you're viewed, which is the wrong choice. Or you can kind of adopt it as part of like your power and your strategy and like how you're viewed. And then you can kind of work towards, not embellishing it, but really like owning it. Right.
So you had this revelation of your own experience of that for yourself.
Yeah.
And that interaction with him created an awareness about you. How was it pivotal for you?
It was pivotal because he brought me in and he really did. There were a lot of things that I gave off that, I really honestly was rejecting, that I didn't feel were true because they weren't true of me as Matt. So, like there, like one, like a couple words that were thrown at me, because again, this is like a workshop where you're in like, a dark studio at Terry Schreiber Studios. And like at one point, like you sit in front of like, 15 or 20 of your peers, and they're like taking notes on like what you give off. Like it's a very weird experiment. Like it feels like a really weird actor experiment, and it is, because
sounds
a lot of
like a Sedona thing.
But because a lot of the actor stuff that we do is weird, guys. But it can work. Like I was just watching an interview about Margot Robbie, and like she was talking about being a pit bull in I, Tonya, and like I've done animal work before, and sometimes like it really is. It's like a little bit of a 5%, 10% in the back of your mind. Like, how does this character move? Like, what's his body language? And I love that. I think you really need to get into your body for this. So for Sam, it was getting in front of these people, my peers, right? And basically having them judge me. And, some of the things that came up were that like I came across like, overly passionate or arrogant or what was another one that conceited, right? Like, and then I was like, God, like I come across that way. And like, I was just kind of like, again, there were a lot of positive things too. Like it's all encompassing, right? Because you're trying to flush out like what it is that you give off uniquely as a person. But there were a few key elements, especially the ones that I was rejecting, that I felt like were hindering my ownership of me as an actor, right? And so he unlocked that because he brought me into his office, and I was really struggling. And like, we had this, again, really amazing conversation, me and Sam. And he said, no, you need to embrace this, because like arrogance, what is that? That's pride, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're prideful, like you're not overly passionate. Like, and he said, honestly, if you're overly passionate, that's what you have to be as an actor. Take ownership of that. Like, you know what I mean? And sometimes like conceited, well, like sometimes you have to be selfish to make your dreams come true. So he reframed all of the things that like I was kind of fighting against in my psyche to kind of unlock this like real core piece of me that was already there. And so I really do. I think it was just a fascinating like experiment, but it was one because he, told me my myth, which is the gift of returns, which is that like I fight for people and I hope that maybe I get some of that back, right? Like I'm there for them. I will go down with my own ship. I care about others, right? I want the collective thing to be greater than all of us. And then when I come across a role like Fabian Verdugo, it just unlocked everything, because it was like, and you do say this, like, I mean, the roles that are meant to find you, like, will always find you. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Well, I'm just thinking, like with Fabian, a great director, there is an element of ego involved, because ultimately the buck does stop there. Yeah. And so these elements you're talking about of conceit and passion seem like they would be perfectly part of the alchemy of the character that you're creating. And if you had shoved those away, like, I can't be conceited, I can't be, the wholeness of who Fabian is would have been lost.
So insightful. And honestly, for me, like, it was like that ability. And I honestly feel like if I hadn't had Sam Christensen's teachings, like, I never would have been able to give myself like this risk with Fabian, which is that I felt Fabian big. I felt him big, but I felt him honestly. So like a lot of the things that I felt, again, when I was working with my acting teachers and my colleagues for this, like, it was the fact that like I put myself on tape. I only did one take of my audition. And it was like my teacher just kind of like looking at me and being like, and I was like, what does that mean? He was like, you have a very clear take on what you want to do with this character. And I think that's the best you can do as an actor sometimes is, and Tom Hanks says it, like I listen to like all the great actors, and he's like, show up on time, learn your lines, like, which means do the work. And honestly, like, it's not just learning the lines, but the next thing that he says is really the key is like, make some choices, really like have an idea, right? That's the quote. And so it's like, it's very much like the ability to, as an actor, give yourself permission to have the idea. And I feel like if I hadn't had Sam and I hadn't had Terry, I wouldn't have, like, I would have said, well, Fabian, like, I mean, but I'm going to be on film, and like, I need to like make sure that like I'm dumbing it down, because like, theater's more technical, and like if you act too big, like sometimes that can come, and it was because of Sam and Terry where I was like, no, I feel him big, but I feel him honestly. I feel him truthfully. Like, he is passionate. He's unapologetic. Like, he will go down with his own ship. If that comes across as conceit, no, he's prideful. Like, he's fighting for something. And everybody does that. So like, it really was. It's like, again, you're the sum of your parts as an actor. You're a sum of the ability to learn. I feel like for me, growing up as a martial artist with a father that's a sensei, like, it has kind of given me that perspective of like, always be learning, always be like figuring out your craft. But for me, like, Fabian going the full method approach, because we had so much crossover, made sense for me and unlocked a lot of the stuff because of my teachings.
I'm wondering, Matt, there seems to be a juxtaposition, like you just shared that martial arts is a very deep part of your life. Mm-hmm. And in my weak knowledge of it, it seems like there's a mastery of emotion involved with martial arts. And yet what you're sharing with as an actor is a very grand letting go of emotions, a freedom of emotions, so it can blow up large. Do you, like, are those opposing traits, or do you find that you're actually better at both because of one or the other?
Oh, definitely better at both, and that's that's so in line with, I think, who I am as an actor, is that you need to find things outside of your passion that can be an escape for you. And I feel like martial arts has always been that for me. I was that karate kid on the deck. Again, my father's my sensei, so I had no choice, right? Like, I was going to be that karate kid. I actually just went for my 4th degree black belt last year on May the 4th. Star Wars Wars Day, and it was the day after my dad's birthday, so it was perfect. I got to spend the birthday with him and then make him a proud papa afterwards. Yeah.
So that brings up the question: how hard are you pushing your team to get you auditions over at Lucasfilm?
Yeah, I mean, you have to push your team to get you into doors, right? I always say that, like, you have to be the owner and operator of your own ship. Like, nobody's going to care about your career more than you will. And you have to make some tough choices sometimes. You have to say, like, no, I think I need to be here right now, like right now. Like I have my agent that got me a great audition, for a gig that would be in London for 6 months, but it's a theater show. And it's a great theater show. Like it's a piece that I would love to be in, but it would be 6 months of me being away from LA, being away from a lot of the local auditions here. Brandon, is trying to get this next project up and running that he's got a part for me for that could shoot, as soon as this summer. So again, like, I have to kind of tell her, even though she's looking at it like, I want to book you in this, because again, they need to make a living too, which I get. But like, creatively, where I feel like I belong right now is that I have this film, that I'm grateful enough to be, a main contributor in. And it's my ability to get into rooms right now with these casting directors that, have all these different projects, because again, it's all relationship. Like, if you guys are casting directors in LA and you bring me in for something and I've done my work and I've prepared, but when I close the door and I'm heading to the car, you're like, man, he's just not right for this at all. Like, it's not a good fit. But man, like, he really brought it. Like, he really did the work. Like, I can see that we need to consider him for something else. It becomes like that thing where you get into someone's file and you become, these casting directors, they have minds like I don't have, where they remember. It's like Sam Christensen. It's like he knew, like, oh, it was that guy that I saw at the Public 2 weeks ago, and he is perfect for this really, really like psychologically strapped character in MASH that, like, I got to bring him in for it because I know he's going to crush it.
Okay, I'm gonna focus you back. What, Jedi or Sith?
Jedi or Sith?
Yeah, which way are you going, Matt? Who do you want to do?
The dark side, man.
I started light side, man. Which one?
Come
what are you
to
perfect
the dark
for?
side. Don't listen to the light.
I don't know. I really feel like there's a lot of fun that's played with playing the bad guy, because you always find the good in them. I mean, like, Darth Vader is the perfect example. I mean, it's the product of, like, his journey that brings him to the place where he is Darth Vader.
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking of Hannibal Lecter is such a character that resonates so strongly with me still right now. Like, I bring up that name and that presence is so powerful. And
sure.
Fava beans.
Yeah, like, what a freaking. Well, and you talk about acting, Anthony Hopkins is just.
Oh yeah.
Geez, but I think one of the things I love about learning the craft of acting is you are always empathetic with whatever you're playing.
Yes, you have to learn to understand your character, right? Because like, if you're not understanding your character, then you're judging your character, and you can never judge your character.
And you're not going to play evil. You're not going to play, I'm the bad guy.
No.
You're playing.
You play your stakes, you play your tactics, you play what your character wants, what they need, what they have to have. Like, that's what you have to play. Absolutely.
Right. Are you familiar with the film The Stuntman with Peter O'Toole?
Oh my gosh. Not only am I familiar with it, I actually got to do stunt work with the great Conrad, I think it's Pellicero. He's actually one of the stuntmen that is in the movie. Wow. And I actually got a beer bottle broken over my head. It was the first time where I realized how important these stunt coordinators are, because they protect actors from themselves. I remember being on set with him specifically because it was a pretty long fight. I think it was like a 45-second scrap, which is pretty long, between, two guys. And then there was the beer bottle broken over my head. But when I worked with him, I remember him saying to me, you should be an action actor because your control is off the charts. And I knew what he meant because, of all my years practicing martial arts, because again, when you're acting and you're in the moment, like, it's very easy for a punch to be here or here. Right. So it's like, you have to kind of, keep the emotions real, but also control the body work, because again, you're risking the other actor coming too forward, or and you're here, and then you're here, and that's a disaster, right?
Right.
So it was really cool because the way that he did it, and I mean, again, such a pro that we lost in the industry a couple of years ago. He passed away. Was just his ability to take a couple actors and be like, okay, we're going to mark this at 50% and, do the lines. We always want the energy of the lines to be real. We're always doing the scene, but 50%, we're marking it. Okay, go up to 75%. Nope, I saw that punch come in a little bit too tight. We're going to go back to 50%, And so like it was working it over and over and over again to the point where when we were at 100%, like one or two times, he felt like he checked all the boxes. He felt like we were ready to go. We weren't going to hurt each other first and foremost. And that's really honestly some of the great stuff that I've learned. And that's why I consider myself an action actor, is because of Conrad, because he taught me like, wow, I do have the skill set to, do a lot of the physicality from my martial arts background, but that does not make me a stuntman. And I want to make that clear. These people that do the stunts, well, because a lot of times too, production doesn't want you as an actor to do your own stunts because it's too risky. Guys, if you two are my producers, and like, I do a stunt where I'm jumping from one building to another and I break my leg, you're both going to be like, oh, fuck, we might be out of production.
We just lost 4 weeks of production.
You know what I mean? So it's too risky. So that's why the only stunt people that you see in movies anymore are your Tom Cruises, the people that are producing their EPs of their own projects. So because they can call the shots, essentially, they do their own stunts. But that doesn't happen anymore. It's not worth it. And again, these stunt people, like, they are crazy. Like in another life, I would be a stunt person because it's like stuntman, going back to your question. It's like they have such a respect for each other because I'm friends with like Il-Ron Choi, who is, he played Spider-Man, and it's like, he uniquely can do stunts that a lot of other people can't do. And so it's like that, like the subjective nature of it is like out of the picture, because it's like, you can either do it or you can't do it. And if you can do that shot where you're jumping off a tractor trailer that's falling over while it's about to blow up and then climb to, like if you can do that stunt, like stuntmen are like, oh, dude, that like, you know what I mean? It's not like acting where it's like, well, like we've hung out today, like maybe you like my work in somewhere in Montana, like but it's subjective. Like you understand that. Like I grew up with like, 2 hockey players that were goalies, and they knew their stats. They knew what they needed to do to get to the next level. Like there's no stats in acting. Like we understand that. Like it's a subjective art. But stuntman, oh man, the stuntmen, and I actually really should say stunt women, because they're tougher than the guys, because they have to do all their own stunts seriously without pads, in high heels, in mini skirts sometimes. Like they can't hide all this Under Armour that the guys can. I mean, I've seen the Under Armour for the guys. They're wearing like freaking like a hockey like body armor. You know what I mean? So it's a really cool world to be part of. And yeah, to answer your question, Mark, I would love to be in a film, I think, where I could like demonstrate my physicality. So whether that was a good guy or a bad guy, whether it was a Jedi or a Sith, I don't
think it matters.
I don't care.
Well, are you and Laura developing projects that you will be acting in?
Yeah, we are. So, I mean, we actually have a film that we are that already is to script, that's actually won a couple awards. And, like in the vein of Fabian, this role that's really rubbed off on me, we want to take a film like Brandon did to Polson, Montana, back to our little small town in Front Royal, Virginia. Wow. So it's a Christmas movie. It's a really cool story. It's got some darkness to it, which I really like. It's not your traditional, like, movie, like in depth, right?
Wait, we just missed
Now
you,
we're
Matt.
just,
The internet cut out. So you said it's got some darkness and it's not your.
Yeah, it's got some darkness to it. It's a really, really great script. I play one of the lead characters in the film, and it's something that we're working towards in the next year or so. Again, things get pushed back all the time. She's actually one of the 5 fellows in Project Involve, which is the Film Independent, which is the Independent Spirit Awards. She's one of the 5 writers that got into this program, so she's going to have a short, developed this year, and that's kind of the focus for this year. But, eventually as we, accumulate our team, because that's the best part about film, as we meet, more producers and directors and cinematographers and editors, again, you need your team. You are the sum of your parts. And I think that's why I love collaboration in film so much, and TV. Is because you really do. You adopt people that understand the collective vision that you're trying to bring out together. And that's why you see the same actors and directors work together. You see the same cinematographers and directors work together. It's no surprise, because again, you understand each other's vision.
I got to say, I'm a huge fan of Christmas movies. And one of the things I've noticed about them is that emotional richness that you get as part of the climax, the third act, is directly dependent on the believability of the low ebb of the character arc. And so when I hear you talking about really bringing in the darker element to a Christmas movie, I get a lot of hope, because I really do. I'm scanning, I do a thing where I pick on my digital channel, and then I watch one every night for 24 days. And I need stuff to actually have a human element to it. It can't just be so paper cut out that it's I can't appreciate it. But I love to have that experience of the miracle of Christmas, right?
So
coming from.
You live on the Hallmark Channel during December?
Christmas time, I do. I have no problem admitting it. I love that, and I've been sitting there it's getting to the point now, because I
do too. They're great. Yeah, listen. Every film has a unique
genre.
Genre or a methodology. What it's trying to do or what it's trying to say. And Hallmark movies are easily digestible films. I mean, and sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need something that is gonna have less weight to it, right? And sometimes you really are in the mood for something that's gonna maybe tear you apart a little bit, right? And
I think a Christmas film that had more weight would actually kick butt on terms of ratings in that arena. Because one of the things that's true, it's just a little bit too much marshmallow and hot chocolate. I need a little bit of bitter challenge in my villain part of it, right? I want to ask another question. One of the amazing things to happen in film this year was that Anara won the Best Picture award, and it's an independent film that was done at a very reasonable budget. Do you see how potentially Somewhere in Montana could follow in those footsteps, or some other independent projects? And what do you like about being an independent producer?
I love independent film. And I mean, again, for all your listeners right now, we are the resistance, we are the human stories matter approach, right? Because again, we're talking about a lot of these Hallmark movies. I mean, AI is a big part of, it's not going anywhere. And we have to learn to adopt strategies, and Laura's learning a lot about it with open AI and, programs I think it's called Sora right now. But I do think that independent films, again, they are worth contributing to. When you go to the theater or you rent it on VOD, it means so much more for an independent film than it does for a big budget film. I mean, again, these are people that are a lot of times sacrificing everything. You will see in my character as Fabian Verdugo, because again, Brandon wrote himself a lot into this film. It really breaks you apart. Sometimes you are in this vulnerable position when you are an artist and a dreamer, where I always say dreamers are fighters. We will we will go tooth and nail to make sure that our dreams are realized. But sometimes that puts us in a very vulnerable state, right? Where we'll be taking out loans, or we'll be doing things that, maybe are scary to make sure that the dream, happens and comes true. So, to answer your question, Mark, I mean, Anora is a big win for all independent film. You know, it's a big win for really that like resistance. And I really do. I love independent film. Like, I'm such a fan of independent film because I see the just genuine love of the game in it. You know, I see people sacrificing tooth and nail to make something happen. And again, we're talking $6 million. I mean, The Godfather 50 years ago was shot for $6 million. So just to give you an idea of how little money that actually is, when you talk about one of the greatest time, you know, films of our generation, my favorite film, not of my generation, but my favorite film of all time, The Godfathers, you know, is that first one was shot for $6 million. So the fact that Sean Baker, and this was another part that was so incredible, wrote it, which is pre-production, you know, planned it essentially. Directed it, which again is, I think that relationship, and this is kind of what I want with Laura too. I want her to try directing once because I think there's a really cool element to writing something, articulating how you see it, how you visualize it on the page when you're alone, putting it on paper, and then articulating it in the production phase, which is being a director, right? And she is an actress, so she knows how to talk to actors, and I just think she would be great at it. So I really want her to try that. But then he also edited it. He's like extra credit, right? So then he sculpted it. And I mean, editing is a whole other process in film that is so miraculous, because then again, you're shaving off those elements and making those tough decisions and, you know, cutting down scenes. And for him to be able to do that to his own work is a big win. Like, and this film winning a lot of Oscars, like in terms of its independent film nature in the midst of all these other films that have, you know, just monster dollars behind them, is really gratifying, and really it gives a lot of hope to indie filmmakers out there.
You know, what I love about his story too is he did that movie Tangerine that was shot all on iPhones. And to me, that says any excuse I have for why I'm not doing it is just that. It's an excuse.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been so fascinating. I'm really inspired and a fan now of your work, Matt, having met you and knowing that somewhere in Montana is actually Polson, Montana.
Yeah.
Really cool idea. Mike, what we do in this space with the Moped Outlaws is go as deep as we can, and I'm really grateful for what you've shared. And we tend to have a final question that we ask, and we're going to ask that.
Always have a final question, always. But before we go there, what's been the most challenging part for you about committing to acting? Oh, I have a question left. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. We'll do two more before our main.
Yeah.
The most challenging part about committing to acting?
Yeah. Well, how have you paid the price, and how do you stay committed?
Hey, you guys ask all the good questions. I like you guys. I could do this again. Honestly, I think it's keeping the business part of your acting career in check, and understanding that your job as an actor is to stay creative. You know, like, and not get bogged down by the business side of it. Now, I feel like I've gotten good at that in many different ways. I really, truly appreciate auditions now. Like, I just love auditions, like, because again, that is already a win for me. That is my opportunity to act. And I always say this to, you know, younger actors just getting their start, like, you know, you have to find joy in the journey. Like, the journey is the destination. And I think that if you love acting, then you need to love auditioning, because that's your opportunity to act. That's your opportunity, even though it's in front of, you know, maybe this wall that I've got behind me, you know, even though it's, you know, not a fully flushed out production. It's your opportunity, going back to Tom Hanks, to, you know, learn some lines, to make some choices, you know, and find the joy in that. And then the tough part, you know, comes, and you have to just get good at it. It's part of the job. You got to let it go, you know, and move on to the next one, and keep that space. And however you do it, you know, for me, like, I'm a big football fan. Like football is my religion. Like Sundays, like I zone out, I watch football. Sometimes I go outside and because I'm a lifelong martial artist, like I do a couple katas, find an escape from your passion because you will burn yourself out if you're all in all the time. So, it's a great question, a great insightful conversation starter, because I think that I'm always in the process of getting better at that. You have good days and bad days, but I think I've really adopted this strategy that the roles that are meant for you will always find you. I think that I learned so much about myself in Fabian Verdugo. I feel like I didn't even realize why I was granted the role. And that's the way I say it too. I used to look at it like, oh, I got to book the role, to impress my agent, to impress my manager. No, none of that. Like you gotta do the work, and you have to have a vision, which is something that Al Pacino says, who's, my idol, right? I'm a Sicilian kid. But I love that. Like that, I think that's the key element of this beautiful quote, is that you have to have a vision of yourself. And I feel like I really have always had this vision of what I can do and what I can say as an actor. And then you have to do the next step, which is you got to come to set and you got to be one of the team. It doesn't matter whether you're second on the call sheet, like I was on this production, or 22nd on the call sheet. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you got to bring your A game. You have to be a part of the puzzle. You have to serve the material. And if you can keep enjoying that, again, you'll be an actor for life, because that's the job. That's the gig, Yeah,
that's brilliant. Yeah, that just reminds me, like, ultimately, anyone on a film set, they don't want to be a babysitter. And if you need babysitting, then you're not going to be called back very often.
It's incredible. I think, Brandon saw in me like just somebody that cared so much for his role that he'd gifted me, because I looked at it like a gift. I mean, that's a gift that I gave him at the premiere was a barnwood sign was somewhere in Montana, and it had all the different set pieces. And on the back, I said, thank you for the role of a lifetime, Fabian Verdugo, Matt Drago, because it really was. It was one of those things that changed my life. I knew that it did. But, I take responsibility in that. I remember when I got the call that I had, that I had been granted this role. And I kid you not, guys, the second that I hung up, the first thought in my head was, okay, Matt, it's time to get to work. Because again, then you have to earn it, like, it's not like it's just like given to you. There are stories all the time where like you might show up to set and like the producers are, I don't know, like, like we might have to go like, last minute, like recast or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's not that I felt like that was on the table for me, but it's that I wanted to show up over and over again. I wanted to show my directors, my producers, my crew members, my cinematographer. Like I want to make sure when I'm in production, because again, crews are what makes films great, And so I want to make sure that like I'm doing the work for them too, that like I am a piece of the puzzle and that like I'm not wasting anybody's time. Like that's my job. I take so much, as you can probably tell, responsibility in being an actor, that I think that is what makes me probably at the sweetest part of my career right now, where I'm just embracing it and loving it. And I think it's because people see that I love to be around my people and I love to tell a story collectively.
I hope that you and Laura enjoy many experiences of the role of a lifetime, and that we do have more episodes with you, because this has been a pleasure and your passion is right there. And I love it.
Before we get to the last question, okay. I got another last question.
Thank you, Greg. That was really sweet. I appreciate that.
Sorry to interrupt that too. Yeah, it was really sweet. I have the same hope for you guys. I can see the brightness in there. So what the hell is Cuisine de l'Apocalypse, and what was your favorite meal?
Cuisine de l'Apocalypse actually is the film that actually shot a month and a half later with two of the same producers from somewhere in Montana. And ironically, Kyle and Zuzu Weingart, who are the reasons why I was put in touch with Brandon Smith, the writer and director of Somewhere in Montana. She was the one that read this script. because she had moved back to Montana and we were working together in a steak restaurant in Valencia. And, I had gotten her an agent to help her out. I like to try to help out my actor friends that have been through it like me. And she looked out for me and she reached out to me and she said, I read the script by my friend Brandon. And every time I read one of the lead characters, I see your face. And so it's kind of made us lifelong friends because, again, we look out for each other. The fact that I'm even talking to you about this film right now is because of Zuzu Weingart. And friendships, right? Because it's all about relationships in life. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, it's all about the people that we surround ourselves with. So they actually had their own film that they were working on a month and a half later. And my favorite part of the meal, honestly, being on set and having a little bit part in that film as well, was getting to see my friends do their work. Honestly, honestly, like one of my best friends, Kevin Jack. He's been a lifer actor. He's in class all the time. He's worked for it in the ways that I have. And so, we had one scene where we were hanging out together until 3 a.m. in Montana, and it gets cold up there. We are in a tent surrounded by heaters and still freezing our butts off. Like, it was crazy, but just to see him in this scene, it's one of my favorite scenes from the film. And just to see him jive, and do his his chef thing, honestly, it brings me so much joy to see other people that I love doing what they love. And to be honest, that was my favorite meal from being on the set of Cuisine de l'Apocalypse, for sure.
Got it. All right, Greg, bring it home.
All right. So our final question. Tradition here at Moped Outlaws, where we talk about everything but mopeds. Eminem or Foo Fighters?
Eminem. Eminem has a very special place in my heart because I would be that weird musical theater actor that would go in for a final callback, literally blasting Lose Yourself right before I sang my 16 bars of how did I get here, how the hell pan left, you know what I mean? But it would be Lose Yourself, and then it just it made no sense, but that was a song that always fired me up. I actually feel like Eminem kind of got me into that playlist idea of I create a playlist for every character that I have now. I do a lot of backstory with my character, and I usually listen to the playlist while I'm creating the backstory for the character and all the little idiosyncrasies and things that make the foundation for the character that I'm going to work off of. And I think it all starts with music. And he was probably one of the first artists that I used to fire me up.
Awesome. Hey, so do you have a public playlist for Fabian that we could check out?
It's not public. I guess I could make it public. I mean, yeah, it's actually the soundtrack that I used because I was the only actor that drove to set. And so it was kind of, Brandon jokingly called it the Fabian Freedom Tour because I stopped 2 days in Vegas from LA. I went to the premiere of Mad Apple, which is the show at New York. It was the opening night. So I got to walk the red carpet and meet a lot of the performers. And then I went to Zion and I just hiked. And that was really where I felt like the methodology, because again, I went full method. I lost 25 pounds for this role. I really felt like I needed to do everything to get myself in the mind, body, and soul of this character. And, I just hiked the Crystal Lakes and stayed at the Zion Lodge and met a lot of people that had moved from New York and New Jersey, where, my family's originally from, and, just kind of given it all up to be in nature. And so I'm driving up, from Zion to then Utah to then Montana. And I've got this playlist with Counting Crows and Tom Petty and, Eminem and Hollywood Undead. And it's all over the place, honestly. But
I would love if you shared that playlist.
Yeah, I could do that.
Playlist. All right.
Well, we'll look for that in the show notes on the links on YouTube.
Sure.
And in the show notes. What a pleasure, Matt. Yeah. And may this be the first of many great successes and then conversations with us.
Yes, absolutely, guys. Greg, Mark, it has been a pleasure getting to know you today, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I always say this, but it's really true. You know, these conversations become a part of, you know, my story and my journey. I mean, you only get, you know, sometimes like 10, 20, an hour and a half, you know, to show your work as an actor, but that doesn't necessarily show what you're about, you know, and tell your story. Because I look at it like in sports too. It's like, you know, you can make the plays on the field, but who are you off the field, right? I think that's part of your story. And so being on shows like yours, like having the platform and having wonderful, rich conversations like this means a lot to me too. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Recording stopped.